he talks about binary and the duality, the light and the dark. It's the Vesica Pisces. But the way I see the world, the organic matrix is the Trinity. It's that neutral God force that actually synthesizes both sides, the light and the dark, all the opposite are synthesized into the neutral point, which is the definition of the Trinity to me.
Hello, everyone. I am Claudiu Murgan, the host of the Spiritual Inspired podcast. Welcome back to a new episode. My guest today is Rebecca Paris. Rebecca, thank you for accepting my invitation.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So, like most of my guests, you build your reputation and career in the corporate world. You are a former advertising and marketing executive, but also you had your own artistic side as a portrait artist. But then in 2017, you went through something dramatic related to your spiritual path. Can you expand on that, please?
Yes, but it does have to do with a family member. So I won't go into too much details just for privacy, but there was a time where I was out walking the dog, and then one of my family member of mine called and was explaining a situation that happened to her that there was no other explanation except something supernatural. And I was firmly in the 3D, but at that point, just being in nature and out walking, something hit me where I was able to just shake my head and say, wait, there must be something more than this. And it was kind of a negative situation. So I really, started asking friends. And then after that, it was just an opening. It was like my higher self just was able to get through to me, tap me on the shoulder and say, well, how do you think this could happen? And then I had an idea that, well, I'm pretty logical, but I had the idea that if a dog can hear a whistle and we can't, there's got to be frequency or sound or light that we can't experience, but it doesn't mean it's not there. So with that opening, I just took off with, I got to figure out what's going on here, and really was intrigued by the intersection between science and spirituality. So I went on a deep dive reading Bruce Lipton and The Power versus Force by Dr. David Hawkins, which just opened me up to a whole new world.
Yes, Dr. Lipton was one of my guests last year. We had a wonderful conversation. He's amazing, and I think he changed the perception of a lot of people about genetics and epigenetics, and the fact that we can change our path in life by just opening up to new concepts.
Absolutely.
And from there, 3 years later, in 2020, it was you went through another change. This time, much more 3D. You changed your name to Paris. So why you change your name and why Paris?
Well, Paris is actually my maiden name. So I got divorced. I had a really, by most standards, a really solid marriage for 27 years. I have 2 children, was in the Atlanta area. And then I just felt like my soul was just saying, you can't continue on. I kept getting the words, you have a purpose, you have a purpose. And while I was still in Atlanta, I was guided to found Raising the Vibe. And it turned out to be, and it just, always get these little nudges, and that that's serious when 3 different people suggest the same thing to you. And that suggestion was, why don't you start a book club, a spiritual book club? Because I was awakening into this world, and there's a couple people I knew that had awakened somewhat. And I said, okay, I hear you. I will start a spiritual book club. And our first book was Power versus Force by Dr. David Hawkins. And then the book club, morphed into, I got the idea, it needs to be more of a nonprofit, and started down that route. And we started holding small group sessions and speakers about spiritual topics in Atlanta. And that was, in my little circle in Atlanta, that was kind of a very unique thing, because people were not it wasn't the area that we're most accustomed to, the supernatural. So this was very, way out of the box for most of these people in my community. But just, having speakers on, the Akashic records or human design. And it's just, the idea was just to open people up to something more than the 3D. And then COVID hit. So that changed everything. And I just felt like I couldn't really live in the world that I was in before. I just didn't fit. I felt like an imposter there, trying to do the same things that I did before and like my country club community and just play tennis. And I just couldn't go back. My skin was is too small. And I just got the idea I need to move to the Asheville area. I have a good friend here, and I just took a leap of faith and decided I needed to get we consciously uncoupled. I moved here knowing one person. My young adult children ended up following me here, which was great because the Atlanta energy can be a little bit very oppressive for starseed kind of kids. So yeah, that's took the leap, and it's been wonderful to follow your soul because it's really the only path. Once you wake up to that, there is no other choice.
Yes,
My view.
you're right. Yes, and you mentioned Power versus Force, another book that impacted so many people. And in fact, even if we are doing this interview in February, and on March 1st, I'm invited to speak at a book launch, which is based on Power versus Force. A friend of mine wrote a whole book with stories and fables based on each level of awareness, uh, based on a map of consciousness.
Wow.
So, as I said, a very impactful book.
Yes,
And you
absolutely.
mentioned your children, so and also star seeds in the same sentence. How open are they to what you are doing, and do you see any specific features in them that are, meant for the spiritual path?
Absolutely. They are in and out of it, but very naturally open. I think they were my biggest teachers as they came in and I was really just living the 3D life. I had a pretty good life going by most accounts. And then they showed, just they came in very ultra sensitive is what I would call them, maybe neurodiverse. And then having to navigate them through the school system was what really was the largest challenge for me. And they were asking, my daughter was asking questions like, what's the nature, how do we get here? And what's the nature of the universe? That wasn't a question that I was really entertaining. I was just, doing my thing. And then they opened me up to it more than anything. And then I just went off. And then at first, I think they thought I was a little crazy. But then after that, really kind of their inner knowing really accepted that what I was saying is pretty much true. Some things they question because I can get pretty far out there. So they go in and out of it, but they're very, very much open to it.
Yes, as parents, we have to live by example and not force anything on them. And if they want to come around, they will on their
Yes.
own time. And I learn it the same way as a parent, and I think it's fun.
Yeah.
Going back to your activities, I read on your website about the ebook you wrote about Matrix Resurrected.
Yes.
And you know what is a very interesting concept, and I also sent it to my boys. I said, please, you love the movie, the documentary. I think you should go a little bit deeper and understand about the real concept of the Matrix.
Yes.
So do you think that the brothers Wachowskis were are connected to the God source in order for them to put in there so many hidden messages?
They were definitely, I'm not really aware how connected at what level they are. There's a lot of esoteric knowledge that aren't totally 100% of God's eternal light. But they definitely, I believe, knew what was going on, or whoever. There's some stories that they might not have written it originally, that somebody else did. And so I'm not sure the background of it, but regardless, whoever wrote it knew exactly what was going on, and they were teasing us into it, but there's so many things that were just in plain sight if you really took the time to really understand it. And then when I just kept watching it and going over and over, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's what that means. It just all this knowledge just poured into me about, I have it laid out in like three sections. One is, we are in a matrix. The Matrix movies are not, they're a documentary. They're not just totally sci-fi. And a lot of our reality, I'm finding, is in our sci-fi movies and, our superhero Marvel movies. And that's where I feel like the truth is in so many cases. But that, and then how they keep you trapped, how the controllers keep you trapped. And I think some of them were manipulation of emotions to keep you, we talked about the consciousness scale, the shame and guilt are at the lowest levels. And there's so much of our media and so much of everything trying to kind of keep us in those lower levels to keep us from, really knowing our own God essence. Pharmaceuticals are right up there. You think about the red pill, the blue pill, but just the numbing down and just the level of distractions that we face in society. With so many distractions, it's so hard to look inward, to take the time to just breathe and let that higher self part of you come in and speak to you, because we're just too focused on the external. So those are a few of the things from that book.
Yes, and the last scene of the movie, I think, is very telling when we are being told that 97% of us like to be complacent, to be told what to do, and have that cushion of care from someone else, external advice all the time. So that's very, very telling.
I know, and unfortunately, it's so true. I think as a species, we've lost our sovereignty, and we've just lost the ability. We're just been so trained to trust the authorities and the experts and the pillars of society, and you just do it and you don't question it. And the school systems are unfortunately promoting that kind of thinking. So it just takes a brave person to just come out of the box and say, I'm not having that. I don't need to trust these so-called experts or the politicians. I am a sovereign being. And then those 3% get to paint rainbows on the sky, I believe he said at the end of the movie. You go paint rainbows on the sky, but the rest of them, they like my world.
Yes, indeed. And you also mention and talk about the organic versus inorganic matrix of reality. Can you
Yeah.
expand on that concept, please?
Um, yeah, I follow a woman named Lisa Renee who does energetic synthesis and the Ascension Glossary, and it really resonates with me that, I think we're in a matrix. There's many physicists, Greg Braden and among many of them that talk about our holographic reality. Like we are the projectors, our consciousness is projecting out onto the world, and we use our filters to interpret reality. And we're like one fingerprint on the world, and every other conscious being is also projecting their view on the world, and that's where you get your collective consciousness. My view is that we were never meant to be in a world like this. Humanity wasn't designed for this world. It was never supposed to be this hard. They call it this, the school of hard knocks, and we're here to learn. I do believe that, but I also believe it's been severely hijacked. And a lot of the creation codes, I believe, were turned in reverse. And some of the what I call controllers, the people who would like to control the sovereign, the beings here, almost turned the energy, like the organic creation codes, turned them upside down to be able to siphon energy from the many souls who are here, and really just, I believe there's so much mind control. But I think we're walking in both worlds right now. During this ascension cycle, there's opportunities from the plasma rays and just the way that the planets, where the planets are, we have the opportunity to realize who we truly are as powerful creators we're one with God, and we are powerful creators. So but unfortunately, the more AI version of this reality that we've gotten used to, these pillars of society that have been really trying to box us in, are still there, and we're having to decide how we step out of the controlled world, the enslaved world, into our own, our own organic, being and doing what we want to do and not feeling like we have to follow all the rules of the controllers and the pillars of society that are trying to do that.
Yes, and somehow the screw is getting tighter on us. They want us, to embrace the transhumanity concept, because now we are hackable animals at the
Yep.
molecular level. And I think we are going towards the movies, the sci-fi movies that we all grew up with, and that's a little bit scary. But at the same time, we are told that we can create our own reality. So if we can detach from those thoughts and stay, fully in light and love, and maybe we will be able to um, get rid of that false reality.
Yes. And I believe to get rid of it, we have to actually go through our fear. We can't, you know, there's some spiritual teachings that, the more of the love and light and great, just, positive thinking. And we won't put ourselves there. I believe we fully have to embrace and integrate the shadow, because it's just going to be there on the subconscious level if we don't integrate it. So it's great to always be conscious of, be impeccable with your word and, not spew anger and negative energy. But it's so important as well to feel your grief when it comes in, feel the anger, and be able somehow to at least neutralize it, or even better, transmute it into something positive. So I think there's several of us right now that are just feeling the energy, either absorbing it or transmuting it, and really turning the polarity and neutral, making it more of a neutral force to get back to our oneness with God.
Yes, I agree. And while you're talking, something came up to me because I recently talked to a couple, and they are religious. And I think the same concept applies to a lot of people who go to church. And we're discussing about spirituality and the dark side each of us have. And I said, you have to embrace your dark side. You have to embrace, um, as you said, your shadow, and love it. And they're quite puzzled. And they said that I never heard this type of concept. How can I love the dark side? And but you put it in a very different way, like anger. And maybe if I would have used these words, they would have embraced it much faster and easier than me just telling them that's part of their dark side, But when you say dark, they think right away at a entity, you know. I am not going to name the entity, but is
Right.
there in their mind because they go to the church, and this is what the church portrays as a dark side.
Right. And if you remember, David Hawkins talked. He proclaimed himself to be to be devotional non-dualism, and I would agree with that. And to me, dualism is you have the light and the dark, and the light is fighting the dark. But what happens is if you are proclaimed, "I am a light being," you're by doing that creating its opposite, the dark. So instead of fighting the dark, we integrate it into neutrality. We rise above to be the compassionate witness of both, because we are all one, and all are, even the darkest beings who have forgotten who they are, completely cut off from their source. It has to be integrated back, because we cannot, we can't fight anything and keep our highest, vibration of unconditional love. Everything has to be loved. At least it has to be accepted, so we can neutralize these forces back into the Trinity. And that's, part of the Matrix books he talks about binary and the duality, the light and the dark. It's the Vesica Pisces. But the way I see the world, the organic matrix is the Trinity. It's that neutral God force that actually synthesizes both sides, the light and the dark, all the opposite are synthesized into the neutral point, which is the definition of the Trinity to me. And there's
Correct.
so many definitions of the Trinity, but to me, from like more of a science perspective, that really helps me understand how I can't just be on my high horse. I'm just going to fight all those evil people because it perpetuates it
Indeed.
in my
And
mind.
I think the well-known instance where people fully embrace their dark side is during the sacred plant medicine ceremonies, because they are being told and prepared. I
Yes.
said you have to let it come to you and it will eat you up, but then you'll become a new person.
Yes.
And again, that's the only instance where I see people fully embracing this concept 100%.
Yes. Well, and it kind of brings me to the Gene Keys. I'm a Gene Keys guide as well. I don't know if you're familiar with the Gene Keys before this with Richard Rudd, or do you know anything about?
Not before reading everything on your website. I even did run the test. I have my screenshots. So,
Uh-huh. Oh, good. Well, we can talk about that later. But I think he does a really nice job of talking about the shadow. We're actually born, it's not our fault. With the epigenetics, we know that our ancestors are passing down, the what it's like what they call miasma, which is like the light, the God's true light can't really get in when there's these dark crystals that are there. And these dark crystals aren't necessarily our fault. They're just trauma from our ancestors. And the shadow can be just trauma of you being abused or your ancestors being abused. Doesn't have to be more than that. But what it does is it creates a lower frequency where the true light can't get into those parts of the body that are holding that. So the gene keys really talk about, you have your unique keys that you're born with, and that he puts it into three categories. We have many frequencies, but he puts it in a shadow frequency, a word, a gift frequency, and a city. And the shadow contains the seed of your greatness. So when you're in that darkness, when you can recognize it and feel it for even just like 17 seconds or 90 seconds, feel it and let it leave your body, because what happens is the repression is what keeps us stuck. And if we can just allow it to show itself and, oh, that was stuck in my subconscious, then we allow it to leave. And that's really about the easy way to integrate the shadow, other than the plant medicine. And it's done by, in those times of why am I so angry or why am I so sad? Then, Richard Rudd talks about just taking a minute and using that pause to take a breath, get centered, and like, and inquire, well, what is that about? And then you can really ask your intuitive side, why am I so angry about that? Then it will come to you. And then with these just gentleness and patience, you're able to transmute, you're able to make a breakthrough and change your subconscious patterns, because it's really just a program. It's almost like a computer program that we lay down mainly in the first 7 years of life, when in the theta state, to really try to figure out how to fit into this world. And a lot of those programs do not serve us. So we have just got to figure out what's there by allowing that shadow to surface. And then with our higher mind, love it enough to let it go.
and for those who are interested to go through the whole gene key process, can you please describe it? What will be the first step? And from there, how do you read the map, the results?
Yes, so you can either go to my website and there's a link at rebeccaparis.com. There's also, you can just go to the genekeys.com website at GENE keys, KEYS.com. And then there's a free tool that you just push the button, you put in your birthday, birth time, birthplace, and you'll immediately get a free downloadable report with your what he calls a hologenetic profile. And it has things like your life purpose, your life's work, your evolution, which is your biggest challenge here on Earth, and your radiance, what keeps you healthy, and many things inside that really, like the Venus sequence is about what your attraction field is, the suffering that you go through, how your wound was laid out during the trimesters in your first, growing up, each stage of life, And then through the gene keys, you're able to, perfect. You're able to kind of see what your patterns are and kind of unravel them. When you realize there's nothing wrong with you, but you are actually imprinted with this, it's a lot easier to take some of those shadow frequencies that come in. A lot of time we're healing our ancestors, and we're, dealing with our past life situation where we're here to finally come to terms with some of these things. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah,
So you
so
can
this
see
is how
how
they look like. Yeah.
yes. So you can see, and so the first step is to do that. And with your free download, you get a short description of your overall keys, and it will help you. If you're interested in learning more, I'm a certified Gene Keys guide. I would set up sessions with someone to really review the your keys. The first are the four outer circles, which is your genius. And how do you step into your genius? What's holding you back? And then the emotional is the red, and then the blue is really how do you become prosperous, truly prosperous and abundance in this world with your set of unique skills.
Yes, it's quite comprehensive, and you really need a certification to be able to interpret all these results. Otherwise, you might get stuck halfway and still have more questions.
Right. You don't want to be overwhelmed. And even though, I can guide people, it's really up to you to just really sit with and use contemplation to kind of figure out what does this mean for me? And then you're doing the work, but I can guide you so you don't get overwhelmed with some of the work. But it's uncanny when people look at their keys, they're like, oh my gosh, I see that, and it just becomes so real to them.
And what common challenges do people face when exploring their gene keys?
Um, some people they get overwhelmed and they might just get stuck in the shadow and worry about stuck there. But I think the best way to do is look at the gift frequency so you can start aspiring to the higher levels in your keys. But it's a complex process, and it's not just something that you can have a reading and it's like, oh, I'm fixed. It's really years of contemplation, and I've been studying it for 6 years or more. And it's like I still am getting epiphanies about, oh, that's why I'm exhausted. That's in my emotional quotient, that, exhaustion to divine will. And the key for what I found in my life with that is I was giving myself away. Like I kind of had this martyr complex. I needed in order to feel loved, I needed to give myself away. I had a hard time receiving love, but I see it in my gene keys. It's like, if you don't say no to the right things, you're going to be exhausted. And the highest level is, surrender to divine will. So that was just one example of how it just kind of keeps showing up even years later and makes more sense as you get into it.
And just to clarify for the audience, after one session and they generate the map, they get the results, you read the results for them. Do they need another session, or are they on their own applying and implementing the guidance?
What I recommend is just the first session, which is usually about an hour and a half. It takes a while just to go over the outer spheres, the life's work, purpose, evolution, and radiance. So an hour and a half for that. And I like to let people really contemplate that for a month, and then at least a month. And then when they're ready to really do some more of the emotional work and really find out, why am I attracting narcissists in my world or whatever, and you can kind of see what your attraction sphere is, I would do a whole other session, like another hour and a half, on what's called the Venus sequence. And that's really all wrapped up into your purpose, but it's really all the emotional things and how you've made sense of the world, and what your core spiritual values and what your core wound is in the Venus sequence. I'll go back to that in a minute. And then I would wait another month and go through the prosperity keys of what really in business and in life, what are the things that you require, or your genius is going to dictate for you to be prosperous in this world. So I would do it in normally three sections. And then I also, if people just want to work with me on just like the relationship issues, I just do one-on-one guidance for, just open-ended spiritual guidance too. But I want to get back to the core wound, which is fascinating. According to Richard Rudd and the Gene Keys, everybody has in their DNA a core wound, and it's tied with the chakras. And it could be one, which is repression, like all of the light, it's just compacted, all the shadow is compacted, and that's the line one, which is the root chakra. The second chakra is denial, when you project your energy or project the negativity onto someone else. The third, the solar plexus, is shame. The fourth is rejection at the heart. The fifth is guilt, when you're speaking, like it's kind of like you speaking to, like if you're a tribe leader, you might feel guilty, like if you've led somebody in the wrong direction, that's the throat. And the sixth line is separation from source. So all these wounds, everybody has all of them in their DNA, but according to this teaching, we carry one main one. And mine happens to be separation, which is interesting. It's hard because you have to really go through life, and then by patience at a certain age, really start to be able to heal that one.
Yeah. It shows that there are so many opportunities to heal ourselves, so many modalities to heal ourselves. And we don't have to go the pharma way. There are so many intricate ways and accessible ways to do it.
Absolutely. And want to put a plug in for my nonprofit. It's just a website that I've left up there just as a service to humanity. When we stopped holding groups for Raising the Vibe and COVID hit and I moved, I got the inspiration to put everything I could on the website, and it's raisingthevibe.org. And there's so many tools out there for you to pick and choose to learn about, how to know yourself, how to heal yourself with so many natural remedies, and like EMDR and kinesiology and acupuncture and family constellation. So maybe people have heard of these, but I've actually just got them on this website. They're all listed with definitions, and there's some practitioners that are listed, and then also ascension and how do you truly embody your wholeness. And so raisingthevibe.org is out there for anybody who just wants to poke around and learn about all the different ways to come back to self.
Yes, and also on your website, you have an online course, Awakening to the Real You.
Yes.
Is this course adding something else other than the gene keys?
Absolutely. I do this with a very good friend of mine, also named Rebecca. She is a specialized kinesiologist, so we kind of work together. I've got that kind of the science part of it. How we go into what is this? We talk about the esoteric concepts of the holographic reality and the world we're living in, and frequency and how frequency works. The many topics about some of the unknown, mechanics of this world. We talk about the miraculous human body and all the 15 chakras, not the 7, and how we work with our body and what DNA is. DNA is really, in my mind, antennas to pick up on codes that are, you can code your junk, so-called junk DNA, and that's how you become multidimensional, when you start getting those codes and you start traveling through the 12 DNA strands that people don't talk about. I'm sure some of your other guests have talked about all the DNA strands. So that's in the course, as well as Becca's meditations to really help you embody them. We also talk about the ego and the divine self, and how to know if you're an ego. And the ego is the one that navigates the false matrix that we talked about. And the divine self is the part of you that's navigating the organic matrix. And we use movies like The Truman Show to show how one escapes the matrix. He at the end goes up those steps, and has to go through his dark night of the soul through the water, and his biggest fear. And at the end, he gets to the steps and he leaves the studio. So there's fun kind of movie analogies, and there's also all these ascension tools of how do you truly embody the light. So there's several things that are not on the Raising the Vibe side or any of my sites. So
Beautiful. And going back to the DNA concept, I recently interviewed for the second time Amy Robson, and she's an Akashic record reading, but she also works with DNA activation. And she talks about 24 strands of DNA. And in fact, I asked Dr. Bruce Limpton about this concept as well, and if he found any physical activation of more than two strands. And he said, no, I didn't, but I'm hopeful that this is happening at the spiritual level, and you can have 6, 8, 12 strands activated. But on the physical level, I think we're going to stay with two strands. This is what he said.
Yeah, because the doctors aren't going to be able to see them, but because at this level, you can only sense what's at this frequency level. And I believe there's actually at least 48, not just 24. I think the 12 gets you to your avatar self, which is being able to transmigrate, to be a cosmic citizen and move out. But there's actually so many more. And the way I see DNA strands is ways to navigate what other realities can your physical vehicle navigate. So it's just different dimensions, up to 48. I've heard that people on Earth can have 48 DNA strands that aren't activated at this point, but I don't know how many people have activated 12, but I believe Yeshua, the Jesus Christ was at 12 strands of DNA coming in. So it's fascinating. There's so many different philosophies and theories and numbers. But I think a lot of people are saying at least the same general thing about how we are so multidimensional, and we've just got to use our consciousness to expand to activate that.
Yes, and increased consciousness and awareness somehow is connected to love. And you also talk about the martyrdom of self-love, how that fits into your story and what you are teaching.
Absolutely. And we've been trained that you're supposed to just love others and give yourself away. And what I've learned is that just unless you're feeding, providing yourself enough love, you're just going to, as I mentioned before, go into exhaustion, because self-love, martyrdom isn't love. It's not a form of love, because it's just, if we are all one, you have to love self first, because you're not able to embody any DNA strands if you aren't taking care of you first. And then you can overflow your own light and connection and support others. But what I was doing is I was totally supporting my children, diving into their frequency, like when they're down in depression, I would dive down there with them, but I can't help them at that level. I'm just making myself miserable. So I love this analogy. Somebody said that so if the best way to do it is you've created your spiritual house and you've done all the work and you're connecting in, you're meditating. So you're building your own bonfire here. So you're lighting up that bonfire of self-love. And then somebody comes along that you care about and love, and they're over there trying to start their bonfire and they're having no luck. And they're like, come help me, come help me. And you leave your bonfire and then you go there and you're trying to light theirs, but only they can light their own bonfire. You can support, you can do everything. But in the meantime, you come back and you've neglected your bonfire and it's dwindling.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the whole martyrdom thing, is you've got to be fully in yourself to be able to do anything for anybody. Or you just dive down into the lower frequencies with them.
Yes, you're right. We have to take care of ourselves. And as I tell other people as well and friends, is you and me are the most important person in the world. No one else is important, because we can impact them by um, growing ourselves, by improving ourselves. And if, as I mentioned at the beginning of this discussion, if they see the change in us, they will change no matter what, I think.
Absolutely. And I believe that, with the power versus force idea, that we are affecting the whole by it exponentially increases love and the positivity when people are doing their own work. And like when you get into these higher frequencies of 500, or 600 on the Hawkins scale, it will help like hundreds of thousands of people get to neutrality. So by doing your own work, you're not just helping the people in your family and yourself, you're helping the whole collective because we're all connected. We're all connected into Mother Gaia. And we're just like an acupuncture point, in the whole. And the more frequencies we can bring down through our vehicle and escalate ourselves, it helps everybody. And it's just a powerful reason to keep doing what we're doing. And that's really keeping me motivated to just do whatever I can.
Yes, same here. Thank you. Rebecca, a lot of my guests travel the world and they get activated at certain sacred sites or sometimes at the locations that are not caring or they are not known that they carry a lot of energy.
Mhm.
Have you traveled to these particular locations or any particular location and got something special in your body and in your mind, in your soul?
Yeah, well, I don't, I definitely been to Mount Shasta and Sedona and, a lot of these other places. And I think when I was not even aware and awake, I was traveling, in my 20s. And I believe even if we're not conscious of it, and I haven't really been that conscious of it, it's still happening. We're still accreting those codes or frequencies that are activating the DNA. So I've been to some of the sacred sites, but there's so many more. And the other thing I wanted to bring out is the genetic stuff. I was inspired to I'm adopted, so hence the separation as the core wound, and to travel to my adoptive family as well as my birth family's hometowns. So just went on a tour and just felt like I needed to be where they were. So I felt like that was actually kind of picking up or healing, whatever was there. And I don't even know what it was, but it also helps to, heal your genetic line by, going to the places that, they lived and thrived
Yeah.
or didn't
Interesting
thrive,
story.
whichever the case is.
Yeah. If you have the opportunity to offer the world another gift other than what you are offering right now, what would that gift be?
That gift is coming through now, and I feel like I'm here to do grid working. It's not fully here yet. And I keep hearing from intuitives that I'm here to write a book. It's a kind of a memoir of me and stepping out of the matrix and, what I've been through. So the book is part of it, but I feel like I'm here to learn more about how sacred geometry, the power of intention, the power of group intention can heal the land. So it's kind of in the periphery. I feel like that's the next thing, but I'm not there yet. But I'm looking forward to the book and possibly really working on the grid to help bring in the right frequencies and heal the water, which is water is so important, as you know, but just the land itself and create a place that can support humanity better.
And have you been curious to find out what star seed family do you belong to? Have you read your Akashic records?
Yes, so I know a lot of Syrian. I got a lot of Syrian energy. My Akashic, the main thing that keeps coming, the Syrian's energies there. The other thing that keeps coming up is called a blueprint deliverer. I don't know if are you familiar with that term?
No.
And this resonates for me as well, but they call it the blueprinters in the Akashic records, and it's those souls who came in to what they call deliver the blueprint, and the blueprint is the 12 strands of DNA activated. So it's people who are willing to come in and try to activate their own, and then help others activate their DNA. So I believe I'm here to help people, embody their true self, their universal self, and not feel like they have to be just stuck in the 3D, enslaved to this small world that we're in. So the blueprint deliver thing definitely hit home. And I think I've been many, many places, traveled different universes and so forth. Phil, I connect with the Indigo family, of the supporters of Earth trying to activate the DNA.
Beautiful. Rebecca, what is your perception of God?
I believe, it's the source of all that is, and it's the fabric of everything that is unconditional love. And it's in God is in everything, but we're just unfortunately not tapped into it because our antennas aren't working right now. But it is, yeah, it's everything, God is everything, but it's mainly the true God is just unconditional love and creation.
Yes, thank you. Beautiful. And some people say that having long hair also works as an antenna. So in my case, I have to work on something else, find something else to use as an antenna.
I've heard that. I've got lots of hair too, which is very interesting. So do my kids. I'm like, that's fascinating if that is true.
Rebecca, are there any other programs you'd like to mention?
I think that's it. Just, going to the key would be going to my website, rebeccaparis.com for any individual support, Gene Keys, access to finding out about how to sign up for the Awakening to the Real You course can all be found at rebeccaparis.com. So and I hope people visit Raising the Vibe and get whatever they want out of that. And I'm just going to keep it up as just a service for anybody who's awakening and finds it in Google or any of the other search engines.
We'll post the links in the description of the video. Thank you very much for all your
Thank
work and
you.
good luck in 2025. Thank you.
Yeah, same to you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And to my viewers, thank you for watching. Visit gnostictv.com and spiritualinspired.ca for older episodes. And until next time, love and gratitude.